Today we're focusing on the chassis. Now if you remember when we were doing the bed, I had decided that I wanted to paint the inside of the bed again. And when I found some surface rust that I didn't like, I decided that, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the whole bed. And since I went ahead and did the bed, of course that means that all of the truck is gonna look brand new again. I've gotten rid of the whole idea of keeping the truck patinaed. And since we pulled the cab off the frame, we went ahead and sent the frame over to Media Resurfacing. They sandblasted it, then it went over to specialized powder coating. They did the satin black powder coat, as well as all the other pieces that we needed to go ahead and install all the Hotchkis suspension. So Josh and I are gonna finish up the front suspension. We're gonna get the brakes on the driver's side, front and rear. And we've got Richard here from Magnaflow today, who's gonna finish up the exhaust. Check it out. We're gonna start with the lower A-arm, then we're gonna put the upper A-arm, then we're gonna put the spindle in, which also has the brakes on it already. Then we're going to attach the steering and the sway bar. So let's get started. These are beautiful parts that Hotchkis offers. It gives us all the right geometry so the truck will sit low where I want it, and it's actually going to perform better than it ever did. Now if you notice, there's a little hole in the shaft here. We've got to line that up with a pin that's on the actual chassis with these two cups that are here. And while Josh is putting the front U-bolt in, I'll put the rear. Well, the lower Hotchkis suspension A-arm is in. We're gonna go ahead and install the upper A-arm now. Put a little anti-seize on there first. Putting a little anti-seize on these upper nuts for the upper A-arm. And you may be wondering why I put thread locker on the bottom and using anti-seize on the top. Well, the top A-arm actually has to come loose so we can put spacers in here and align the front end. The bottom A-arm doesn't move. So we went ahead and put the thread locker on that, tightened it down. It's where it needs to be. Now we're ready to put a spindle on. The reason we turned that shaft and the slots are going vertical now is all the power from the shock going up and down. That little shaft is wider top and bottom now with the slots being on the side, and that's all your strength. We got the front suspension all on. Now we're going to move back and finish the rear brakes. Now this was the original rear end in the truck, and originally this was a 6-lug bolt pattern, but Mosier went ahead and made new axles for us and made it to a 5-on-5 lug pattern, which we've got front and rear. We've already put the whole master power brake bracket system on the back of the axles, and ready now to start fitting the calipers. If you're using thread locker, I have a tip for you. Pull the cap off if you want to use it. Now the reason we chose these brakes for this project, I called Hal over at Bear Racing and Bear Brake Systems, because typically I will use a bare brake system, which I actually have one of their systems for the truck as well. But when we first finish the truck, I actually want to run the 15-inch wheels so it looks like the factory could have built this truck. Bear didn't have a set of brakes that would fit the 15-inch wheels, so I'm putting these on for that purpose. After I drive it for about 6 months, I'm going to pull the 15-inch wheels off. I'm going to change it to a bare brake system, and I'm going to put some big 20-inch wheels on the truck. Now we've got all the Hotchkis suspension on the truck. We've got the brakes on the truck. Master Power Brake makes this brake that looks like the original factory brake system. Now I want this truck to look as if GM actually built a sport truck back in 1967. US Wheel actually reproduces the original rally wheel that I want to run on the truck. This is a 15-inch. We've got one that we can actually try on here. Make sure that everything clears. Looks like we don't have any issues there. That's going to work. Next thing to do is actually get the bed on the truck, and we'll actually check the backspace of the wheel, make it fit before we actually paint the wheels, and before we paint them, we got to weld them still. But that looks like it's going to work.
Awesome.
Now we got to run a brake line, and we can move on to something else. What I'm doing right now is I've taken the brackets that were supplied, I flattened them out, and I'm drilling some holes in the rear end right on the brackets so that I can bolt those brackets onto that other bracket, and then I'll actually have the little flex line that comes off the caliper over here. It'll hold that tight, and then we'll build the hard line that crosses over the rear end with a T that actually allows us to put another little flex line from the brake line that's into the frame down to the rear end. This brake line came in a big loop, which is not what we want. We want a straight line that we can then make the curves where we need them. So I'm just straightening it out so that we have something to work with. When I started to unroll it, what I was doing was unrolling it on the piece of carpet on a flat surface so that I don't just start bending and putting kinks in it. As I told you at the beginning of the episode, we had Richard here from Magnaflow. He's been building the exhaust system. Now we've got all the suspension on, we've got the brakes on, and Richard is getting the exhaust finished. So Richard, tell us where you're at with this.
So, like you told me, you wanted this truck to look like it should have rolled off the showroom floor from General Motors. So what we decided to do, instead of going for a full custom aftermarket approach, we went with one of our box stock items, which is very indicative of what a stock exhaust system fitment should be. So here we have our crossmember back, which literally gets you right here from the bell housing and works from that crossmember all the way back as a bolt-on part. And then the front section is what we fabricated earlier, and that we always have to fabricate based upon the engine and manifold or header configurations that are out there. So 2.5 mandrel vent. Big plus is the X pipe, gives it that balanced sound, a little bit more modern, makes a little extra torque. The bigger mufflers for the truck, so if you are carrying some load in a trailer, you definitely have something that's going to sound good and give you a performance note, yet at the same time knock off some of that drone and the low frequency vibration in the cab. Now we just got to figure out what you want to do for the tips.
Right. Now I know you've already got a tip which I think is fine because it looks like that factory stock, the appearance that we're going for. Now I also noticed that due to the Hotchkis sway bar, we've pulled the mufflers forward about 4 inches.
Yep. We just wanted to make sure that if we had maximum movement of and articulation of all the suspension components, it's not going to interfere. Minor modification to shorten the pipe, basically add that same pipe right onto the back, and you can clear the end links so that you don't have any issues with the movement up and down as the axle traverses its full arc. Great part is that they did a really good job with regards to all the rest of the parts, that they really don't even interfere with the rest of the tailpipe. So lucky that all came together. The guys did a good job there and made my job easier.
Well, this is looking fantastic. I want to thank you for all your help, and Magnaflow for all their help. But you know, it looks like a factory stock exhaust system, but more beautiful.
And a little bit more fun.